Okay, well my journey has not necessarily been farming. My initial journey was basically science-based in industry and in chemical industry. In those chemical industries we produced plastics, and we also produced agricultural chemicals. So I had no problems about where I'd been because that was a very good breeding ground for my thoughts. So it's not the first part of my career was bad, it was good. It was very enjoyable, but it was different to what I'm doing now.
Mm-hmm.
So if I look at regenerative farming, the way I've looked at it, you know, the key thing that I put right, I put a funny looking person there as big. Now, it would be pretty hard not to recognise that I'm pretty small, so that actually is not necessarily me. But what it depicts is the what I call the importance or the central nature of the person who's running the place and how it runs. And that's kind of the change that I think I've made. I started eventually, I didn't know anything about farming, so I farmed the first 15 years conventionally, going like hell and doing good production and stretching the boundaries. But then the change came and realisation came, and I have no bad feelings about what I did at that time. That was all the journey. I don't feel that I did anything wrong. I just did what everybody else was doing. So I don't have any problem with that. But the two key things are to me, are the human mind and what I call the house of learning. And the house of learning's been a lot to do with this group. There's been people brought in like Jules and Siobhan has been a great tutor for my system. I spend a lot of time on the line, on the websites. There's a lot of good information on regenerative agriculture as practiced overseas, in the US, in Australia, and I've even watched a lot of the progress in France this year. Some French scientists outlaying what they were doing in this, and I found it quite different, and they were going in different directions, and very much concentrating on soil. So that's really about all I've done. So my farm is a dairy farm here, and I've tried to show a little thing there. The outputs are from the udder in the dairy farm, but over in the beef part, the animal is sacrificed. So that's the beef side of the place. And there's a little road in between, and there's an underpass, so it's quite two different areas. And I farm them regeneratively in different ways. This is basically a grazing platform, and that's where Siobhan's tutoring has come in very highly in terms of, I haven't tried to do too much pasture input or seed input. I've just used grazing over the years to try and naturally improve from the native grasses that are in there. Doesn't mean to say I haven't put them in there, but that's been small in comparison to what I've achieved through grazing. But over here, there's more emphasis on deferred grazing, because if I have a spare grass, it usually doesn't occur on the dairy platform. It'll occur over here. So therefore, I can use this as a little bit of a storage pot for nutrients. And some of the observations we've heard from the other farmers about the effect of deferred grazing, and I really stand behind that. Some of those objectives, the new seed and the regeneration, the vitality you can get from deferred deferring pastures is quite good. And to me, there's no time on deferring grasses. You can defer it for 3 weeks, you can defer it for 6 weeks, you can defer it for 3 months. But I've found the longer you defer it, the less you're able to graze it, but the better effect it has on the soil. So that's been good. I I put a CF there, so if one of my objectives would be to store carbon, of course. The figure 8 here, that depicts how many streams I have starting my place. So there was, 571 in Taranaki. Well, 8 of them started in my place from springs that generate within my farm. So I have to be sensitive about that. So several years ago, I went once a day with the milking, and that kind of, that became a decision between whether I actually carried on farming or I didn't. If I was so damn tired that if I didn't make that decision, I would have had to sell farm. So that was an easy decision to make in the end, although it took me 3 years to make that decision, to have the comfort. Certainly mental health has gone up, and I just made a little note there that along the journey I've lost quite a lot of production. I'm not going to get up and say that I produce just as much as what I do, because I don't. I've allowed my production to drop, but I do say out of that, because I've dropped so much out of inputs, that I do have the same profit. I still pay the same tax. In fact, you know, this last year I've been paying a bit more tax than what I want to. So that's kind of, you could call that a success, but I'm kind of just monitoring that one. I think one of the big observations, and out of it you get some things that you really do feel pleased about, and I think, as Mark suggested, you know, like the wildlife, and you know, I get sprung occasionally when you walk across some pastures, especially if you've got a fair bit of grass in them, and there's nothing that scares you more than a pheasant suddenly rising up out of the pasture and taking off in those flapping wings. And but you know, once you've got over the kind of the fright of that, you know, you do understand what that's all about, and you know, that bird's life is present. I do draw some water from a pond for part of the farm to you know, for the cows' drinking water, and a lot of the driver for looking at that water infiltration was, well, sometimes my ponds weren't quite as clean as what they should be, or what I should feed the cows, and so kind of that was part of the driving force, because and also it's a good monitoring system, because if you've got a pond that you can actually observe, you know, when you're going to get the cows, and it's there in front of you every day, you know, it does become something that you can monitor. I don't have any numbers to substantiate that, but observational wise, that's very clear. And you know, the last few rains we've had, even though the cows were in part of that catchment area that would normally contaminate that lake that I draw water from, it was damn sight cleaner than it used to be. So, you know, that to me is progress. So,
Great.
yeah.
Thank you, Ian.